Welcome to the Prometheum Foundation Stamford Mayoral debate. The Prometheum Foundation is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Our mission is to foster critical and analytical thinking, freedom of thought, and entrance into the marketplace of ideas. We believe that a representative democracy requires citizens that think about and evaluate issues, and vote with an educated opinion. Discussion, discourse, and debate are essential to that process. I'm Stephen Bowling, President of the Prometheum Foundation, and I will be your moderator this evening. Our panel includes Alice Knapp, President of the Ferguson Library, Claude Marest, Social Studies teacher at AITE, Roy Balasaria, President of PRI Capital, and Alexander Troib, partner at Benjamin Gold and Troib. Each panelist will go in turn and have approximately 16 minutes to question the candidates. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. They are not required to fill that time, only not to exceed it. Rebuttals are allowed at the discretion of the panel with a 45-second response. We have asked the audience to remain silent during the debate and only applaud at the end. The most important applause, of course, will be at the ballot box. Finally, I want to thank the candidates for participating in the debate and thank them for entering in what Theodore Roosevelt called the arena. It is often a difficult and thankless road. The Prometheum Foundation appreciates all who enter it and the sacrifices they make. We wish them all the best in their journey. With that, candidates, we look forward to an informative debate. I ask that you respect the time constraints and that you address the panelists asking the question and not each other. In general, the questions will be addressed to both of you, and as previously determined, Ms. Simmons, we will start with you. Both of you will be new to the executive seat of government. You both have expressed many goals and aspirations for Stamford. Candidates regularly make a lot of promises. However, once in office, a new executive often receives a cold dose of reality. Problems are different than they expected, and unforeseen and unpredictable events force their hand. As voters, we need to know if your priorities align with ours. If you could only accomplish 2 things in your 4 years in office, what would they be?
Thank you to the Prometheum for hosting us tonight and to all of you for tuning in. And I want to thank my opponent for being here and looking forward to a spirited debate on the future of the city of Stamford. I'm Caroline Simmons, and I'm honored to be running for mayor of this wonderful city. And this is an important question. If elected mayor, my top 2 priorities are to improve our infrastructure and improve our schools. 60% of our roads and bridges and sidewalks are structurally deficient. This is unacceptable. We have an aging train station and aging school facilities that don't do justice to the wonderful people that make up this city. And we have to deliver a better 21st century infrastructure that our residents deserve. As a state representative, I've been a champion for transportation projects and securing over $200 million in state funding for transportation in Connecticut. And as mayor, I'm going to be a champion for getting funding from the federal infrastructure package to help deliver a modern 21st century infrastructure for our city. This includes fixing our roads, improving our sidewalks to make our city more walkable and connected, and fixing our aging school facilities to give our students and teachers facilities they deserve. And as mayor, I'll be ready on day 1 with 12 years of federal and state experience to leverage those connections to get infrastructure spending for our city. And secondly, on schools, we have to fix our aging school buildings and give our students quality buildings they deserve. We have to help our students make up for lost time in the classroom. We have to enhance mental health resources for our students by adding more after-school and summer school programs so that all children have quality education. Thank you.
Valentine, the same question to you.
Yes, and thank you. And it's great to be here with you. Thank you for hosting this tonight. And before I answer that, because I don't think it's that long of a question that you wanted the first 2 things, I'd just like to share with the audience out here live and those who are watching some great news that I just got before I came on stage, and that is that the Stamford Educational Association endorsed me today for the first time in the history of Stamford Mayoral races, and I want to thank them dearly and let them know that I'll be there for them to make sure that the one thing that I'm going to do early on and continue through is to make sure that the structures that our teachers work in and our students learn in begin to be repaired. We've been waiting a long time, and I don't care where the money's going to come from. We're going to get them repaired, rebuilt, and safe so that the environment is one that everyone can be proud of. And I want to be the champion for the schools, and I want to change that perception of our schools because we have great teachers and we have great students. And of course, I want to make sure that that Main Street Bridge is finally done and done in the right way.
Valentine, this question is to you. As voters, we would like to know what principles guide you. We can look at this in the context of many topics, but the one on the minds of Stamford residents on a daily basis is the COVID pandemic. The governor is deferring to mayors and local governments to set many policies, from mask mandates to social distancing to proof of vaccination. The situation has spurred a vigorous debate about personal liberties versus the need to protect the public. What are the principles that guide you, and how will those principles guide you in dealing with the pandemic?
Well, when the pandemic broke out, I was the director of athletics at Sacred Heart University. We needed information and we needed it quickly, just like everyone did in the community. But what I did is I relied on my medical staff. I relied on the conference. I relied on the NCAA, and I relied on our nation to give us the best information possible so that we could have step one follow step two. And I also let them know that I believed that what athletes do the best is they adjust, and that this was going to be a fluid situation that we had to be ready to adjust to because it was new territory that we had never been down before, and that we had to be ready to be the leaders on campus to make the proper adjustments and move forward. My number one concern with that athletic department would be the same as my number one concern with the city of Stamford, and that is their public safety, that they are healthy and that any disease, and I think we are going to have another one. I hope it's not in my lifetime, but I think we will. And I hope we've learned from this past experience so we get it right from the start next time.
Same question to you.
These are serious times. We're facing a once-in-a-century pandemic, and our community deserves a leader who's going to have courage, integrity, and bring honesty and transparency to this job of mayor. And I will be clear with all of you that I am going to listen directly to the data and the science from the CDC, from our Connecticut Department of Public Health, and from Stamford Health, and listen to their guidance, and that will judge my actions. When it comes to mask mandates, we know that that is the most important step we can take right now to stop the spread of COVID. And I know we're all tired of it, but if we can hang in there a little bit longer, we are almost over this hurdle. And my top priority as mayor is to keep our city safe, to keep our schools open, to keep our economy open, and to protect the public health and well-being of our residents. In contrast to my opponent, I have not heard a clear answer from him on where he stands on masks and vaccinations, and whether he will listen to the CDC guidance. And in the last emergency, when Hurricane Irene struck our city and he was public safety director, he left the city of Stamford and abandoned the people of Stamford. It's important that voters understand the track record of our mayoral candidates. And I have 12 years of federal and state experience showing up for the people of Connecticut, for the people of Stamford. And I will be a mayor who's ready on day one to keep you safe and to make courageous and tough decisions to protect the public safety of our community.
And obviously, I did follow all the CDC standards at the university. We're the safest university in the Northeast. And if you were here in town when I was the public safety director, you would know that that was one of the most safe situations that ever occurred. And as a leader, I prepared for my absence, like all leaders do, with all of the heads of the departments in the city so that they knew exactly what they needed to do. And by the way, this last storm that we just had, there was nobody from our city in the command center. It was done totally remote with all of the departments. In my case, I did it one person remote.
Simmons, you have 45 seconds.
It's a fact that when one of the most devastating hurricanes hit our city, that my opponent decided to leave Stamford and call a baseball game, and he didn't even finish a full year on the job. And when he was public safety director, he was the only one who's on the stage who had a city position that knew about the mold that was found in 12 of our schools and did nothing about it. So I think it's important for voters to understand track records, and it's not just about what you say, it's about what you do, and it's about showing up in times of emergency. Whether it was at Homeland Security, serving the people of this country on counterterrorism initiatives, or as state representative working tirelessly the past 7 years to deliver for Stamford, I will be ready on day one to deliver results for the people of Stamford, because that's what this election is about. It's about making our city work better for the people of Stamford.
And
Ms.
once
Valentine,
again, I can't, huh?
No, I will give you 45 seconds, but allow me to do it, and this will be the last rebuttal, but please.
Thank you. Anyway, the facts shouldn't stand in the way of a good storyteller. When I took over with the Pavey administration in 2009, there was a 130-page report that was handed to the administration about all the school situations, from their asphalt holes to the trees that were surrounding the buildings to the leakage that were in the buildings. There were 7 buildings that had penetration of water at the time. And the recommendation of that report was to investigate those 7. And what we did is we found one school with mold. That one school had 14 places of mold, 40 people went in, and in 4 days, the mold was completely remediated, and we moved on to the next page of that report.
Ms. Simmons, 45 seconds.
We're here to talk about the future of Stamford and to deliver a city that works better for the people of Stamford. And I'm proud of my record as state representative. Working with the delegation and the governor, we've secured over $300 million in bonding for our city. We secured $65 million in funding for the new Strawberry Hill School. And I'm proud that I take the time to visit our schools every single year. I haven't seen my opponent once up in Hartford for the past 7 years testifying on a bill, fighting for funding for our city. And I think it's important that we have leaders that have put in the work, that know how to navigate state and federal government, who are going to be ready to show up on day one to deliver results for the people of Stamford.
Ms. Simmons, this question goes to you. Many will argue that one of the first responsibilities of government is ensuring the safety and security of its citizens. While Stamford is known as a safe city, we deal with occurrences of school violence, street shootings, and the ever-present specter of terrorism. Aside from pandemics, what do you think are the most pressing threats and challenges to public safety, and how will you prepare Stamford for these and for unforeseen emergencies?
Public safety is critical, and this is something that I think about every day as a mom raising 2 young boys in our city. And I know all of us parents want nothing more than for our kids to be safe and for our community to be safe for its residents. So I take this obligation seriously, and as mayor, I will prioritize public safety. While we were rated one of the safest cities in New England and want to credit our police and first responders for their heroic efforts, no question, as you said, we still face threats. We've seen a rise in shootings, an uptick in car thefts and break-ins, and we also face threats from climate change, storms and adverse weather effects. We also face threats from cyber attacks, terrorism, active shooters, and a range of other threats. And as a city, we need to do everything we can to prepare for these threats and to make our city more resilient. In my time at Homeland Security, I worked with cities across the country to protect them from a range of threats, from terrorism threats to cyber threats to active shooter attacks. And the key was federal, state, and local coordination, sharing of intelligence, resources, and tools and training for our state and local police and first responders so that they're equipped to keep our communities safe. As a state representative on the Public Safety Committee, I earned the Police Chief's Legislator of the Year Award for efforts to protect our community. And as mayor, I'm going to be a champion for public safety, making sure our police and firefighters have tools and resources to keep our community safe. I'm going to make our city more resilient to the effects of climate change and adverse weather. I'm going to make sure we're protecting our critical infrastructure from cyber attacks and making sure we're conducting vulnerability assessments to keep the people of Stamford safe. And most importantly, I'm going to make sure our kids are safe in our school from public health threats, from fights and shootings,
Simmons,
doing everything we can to keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Valentine, same question to you.
Yes, the public safety of our city falls on four major departments in our city. Of course, our police department, our fire department, our EMS services, and our Board of Health. As a mayor, I will make sure that all four of those agencies are coordinated in their effort to keep us safe. I will make sure that they have my support when they go out into the fields and into the streets and into the homes to do the things that they do to keep us all safe, that they will not only have my support, but they'll have my appreciation, because they are the frontliners. They are the people who are putting it out each and every day, and they are not appreciated enough by this administration. I'm not sure they're appreciated enough by my opponent, but I could guarantee you they'll be appreciated wholeheartedly for the job they do when I'm mayor.
Ms. Simmons, would you like a rebuttal?
I want to say that I value our police and firefighters and first responders tremendously. I want to thank them for all the work they've done this past year on the front lines, risking their lives to keep us safe. I'm honored in this election to have the endorsement of our firefighters union, to have received the Police Chief's Legislator of the Year award, and to be in frequent communication with our police chief, our firefighters, our first responders, our frontline healthcare workers at Stamford Health. And over the past year, we've worked tirelessly to do everything we can to keep our community safe from COVID. I've worked with the governor's office and Department of Public Health to get more PPE equipment and more testing sites up in Stamford. I've worked tirelessly to support our first responders and police and firefighters with more resources from Hartford, including better funding and training and tools and PTSD coverage, and will continue to be a champion for our brave and heroic first responders.
Mr. Valentine, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. You know, experience is a great teacher, and you can't teach experience. During that time that I was the director of public safety, I handled four major situations, including a Wallace Point sewage backup, where I had to work hand in hand every day with our Board of Health to make sure the community was safe, evacuated from their homes because of the sewage that was pouring down the streets. I worked hand in hand with Chief Nivikoff and the state police, the FBI, the DEA, and the surrounding communities police force to bring down 60 Latin kings in one dawn rain, and took 130 guns off of our streets during that raid. It was a spectacular day of my life.
Thank you, candidates. Our next panelist is Alex Troib.
Thank you, Steve. Our next question is going to Mr. Valentine. The cost of housing in Stamford continues to increase, and some residents believe that new development is leading to gentrification. Do you believe that there's enough affordable housing in Stamford? And if not, what steps would you take as mayor to address that?
Yeah. In our city, that term affordable housing has become a misnomer. It deals with 10% of any project that is built that has more than 10 units in it, okay? Then you get one affordable housing unit within that structure. If you have 100 units, you have to have 10 affordable units. Those affordable units happen to be half of AMI in our community, and that gets out to about $72,000. That's not affordable. What I'd like to see to start with is to take that fee in lieu, and instead of putting it in these fake affordable apartments, giving it to the Stamford Housing Authority. Let that authority have these millions of dollars and leverage them with other nonprofits in our areas to build things that are actually housing that's affordable for all layers of our economic stream, so that the citizens of our city can have places where they can live and work in our city at the same time. Very affordable housing was made possible by, I guess, one of your partner's husbands, Richard Friedman, who put some of his wherewithal into a project along with Randy Salvatore and others in this exact model to give us a Franklin complex that is spectacular, very affordable housing.
Simmons.
We're facing an affordability crisis in our city, and Stamford's becoming increasingly expensive for so many of our residents. Whether you're a senior trying to retire on a fixed income and seeing rising property taxes, or a working family struggling to afford your mortgage or rent, or a recent college grad who's struggling to afford an apartment who wants to move back here. As mayor, I will make it a priority to make our city a more affordable and inclusive place, because everyone deserves a quality place to live. As a state representative, I fought for more mortgage and rental relief for residents, and also property tax credits for seniors. As mayor, I will champion affordability initiatives by providing more affordable housing on the rental side, by offering more opportunities to transition to homeownership for individuals that want to, and also providing more workforce housing. So much of our workforce can't afford to live here, whether it's our teachers or our firefighters or our nurses. I want to make sure that everyone who wants to live here can afford to. And in contrast to my opponent, who says that if you don't own in Stamford, you don't care about this city, I think that's extremely offensive to the 50% of our city that are made up of renters who work tirelessly for our city. I've talked to renters who are teachers or nurses or students who are so devoted to our city, even members of our legislative delegation who are renters. And he says that they don't care about our city because they don't own a home. Of course, we want to help individuals transition to homeownership if they want to, but why would we demonize half of our city who are renting, who can't afford a home? That is unacceptable, and those are not the values that I will bring as mayor. I will be a leader who welcomes everyone to our city, whether you're renting or you're owning. You have a place here.
It's back. Thank you.
For whatever it's worth, I'll just do one quick response.
45 seconds.
My campaign chairman has lived here for 20 years, and he's never owned. He rents, and I've never found a person who cares more about this city than Dan Miller. So once again, I would like to have my opponent check the facts on who I care about and who I don't.
It's a fact. There was an article that came out today in the Stamford Advocate where there's a video where Bobby has said, if you don't own in Stamford, you don't care about this city. He has consistently tried to divide us and to demonize people who are renting and to suggest that they don't care about our city. This is not only offensive and toxic and unwelcoming to people who are in our city renting, who can't afford or who choose to rent. It's also just a lack of understanding about a modern 21st century city that wants to attract people of all different age ranges, of diverse backgrounds, of people that may want to have different types of housing options and have that flexibility. As mayor, I'm going to be a mayor who is welcoming and inclusive to everyone in our city, and to the half of our population that is renting. You are welcome here. You are wonderful, devoted people, and to people that are owning, you are welcome here too. And I want to unify our city rather than divide us.
Mr. Valentine, I'll give you an opportunity to rebut for one last round if you'd like.
Once again, the facts should never stand in the way of a good story. She didn't even quote me right on what this silly video was that they took an 8-second clip of one of the talks I was having to a community in their backyard. And I was trying to make the point that we need more housing that's not only affordable, but that's livable. And we also need to tell our contractors and find a way to incentivize them to build things that you can own. I understand renting. I've been a renter. I've also been a landlord. it's a way of life of this city. It always will be, and I respect that.
Wanted to rebut, or should we move to our next question? Okay, sounds good. All right, this question is to you, Ms. Simmons. Senior citizens usually live on fixed incomes while their property taxes continue to increase. The tax abatement available to seniors is not offsetting these increases, and the tax payments are forcing some out of their homes and others to make difficult budgeting decisions. Some people would say that they should sell their property, but to them it's not just a house, it's their home and one they've lived in for decades. Should the city assist these seniors, and if so, how would you do it?
It is essential that we do everything we can to help our seniors in Stamford and to make Stamford a more affordable place. And I hear this concern so often from senior citizens in my district who say that they want to retire here, they want to be with their kids and grandkids, but they can't afford to live here because of rising property taxes and the high cost of living. And so as state representative, I've worked hard to expand the circuit breaker property tax credit program for seniors, and I want to do the same thing as mayor. I think you judge a city by the way that it takes care of its most vulnerable, including our seniors and our kids and those who are getting priced out. And as mayor, I'll do everything I can to make our city more affordable for seniors. First, we have a shortage of senior housing, and there's currently over a 2-year wait list for much of our senior housing. So we need to increase the supply of senior housing and try to shorten that wait list. Second, for seniors who want to stay in their home, who are on a fixed income, as you said, it is so challenging to be able to afford rising property taxes. I think we should look at creative solutions like potentially freezing property tax increases on seniors like Florida does, or looking at expanding the property tax credits for seniors. And thirdly, we need to do everything we can to secure more federal and state funding to support more flexible housing options for seniors. Currently, it is so expensive to rent or own a home in Stamford due to the high cost of living. And so we need to do everything we can to provide more government subsidies to make it more affordable.
Valentine, same question.
Well, yes, being a senior and seeing my property taxes increase over 20% over the last 8 years, I'm very concerned with the ability for all people who are no longer making the money that they once made an income to afford to live here. I think one of the solutions is to not increase property taxes. And one thing for sure in this 1 year that we have, where there is this Hartford edict that they want to, in fact, do a reval this year. I know it's every 5 years, but don't we have an excuse to wait another year before the 1 year that my home and many of your homes has actually appreciated in value, that this is the year we're going to have a reval so that our taxes increase for the next 5 years going forward? I think that reval has to be put on the back burner. I think that they must understand the situation that we're in, and this could be a bubble. I'm not sure appreciation will last. And by the way, I understand when you put that 15 seconds up that it's time for me to stop. So thank you for doing that, and that's my answer.
Did you want to address the reval? 45 seconds.
I have called for a delay in the reval of property values. As you know, it's a state requirement that every 5 years, cities and towns reassess or reevaluate the value of your properties. And this year, with surging home prices, I think it's unfair to put that burden on our local property owners, because if we don't delay the reval, then your homes are going to be assessed at a higher value and people will see an increase in property taxes. So I've talked directly to leadership up in Hartford about this. I know how we can get this passed. It will require a simple majority through both the House and Senate in the next session, and I'm prepared to work with our delegation and our governor's office to get this accomplished.
Okay, our next question is to you, Ms. Simmons. Each of you stresses the importance of improving public transportation. A serious and frustrating problem for Stamford has been the deteriorating transportation center. The challenge is that the sites are controlled by the state of Connecticut. For years, city administrations have been excluded from making decisions for what should be an efficient, modern, and attractive transportation hub. As mayor, what would you do to get more influence with the DOT and they stake in planning the future of the Stamford Transportation Center?
Modernizing our transportation infrastructure is essential for the future of Stamford. And modernizing the Stamford Transportation Center is going to be one of my top priorities. We have such an opportune moment right now with the federal infrastructure package coming through Congress. Any day now, Connecticut can expect to receive between $5 to $7 billion in funding. And part of that funding can go to increasing high-speed rail, modernizing our train station, modernizing our infrastructure overall as a city. But the key is we need a mayor who's going to be ready on day one with a plan, with shovel-ready projects, and a vision to make it happen and to secure that funding, and who knows how to navigate federal and state government to get that funding and to get these projects accomplished. With respect to the Transportation Center, we all know that it is aging, it is in dire need of repair. The old parking garage is literally falling apart. We need to have a plan to fix that, and there's a lot of creative things we could do with that. We also need to modernize the transportation center to make it more accessible to pedestrians. It can be very hazardous, as many of you commuters know, to drop someone off at the train station. So I want to modernize around the train station to make it more accessible and walkable for pedestrians. I also want to improve the signage and technology that we're using at the transportation center. It can be very difficult to find your train, so I want to make sure that's improved. And I think we could deliver a modern, 21st century, beautiful train station. Stamford is the gateway to Connecticut. This is the most highly trafficked transportation hub after Grand Central, and we can get this done. It will require federal, state, and local collaboration, and I'm going to be ready on day one to bring a team together to get it accomplished.
Mr. Valentine.
Well, this has been a project that has been evolving for quite a while. I doubt that my opponent has any shovel-ready projects on day one, which is only six weeks away. But one of the things we need to understand is that the function of that train station is to move people back and forth. And the main movement is from here to New York City. And the time that it takes and the frequency of trains must be addressed immediately, because they'll be running when I get to office, and they should be running promptly and faster than they're running now, more efficiently. And I think we really do need to do a reevaluation of what a transportation center should look like in 2021. I think it should be the place that supermarket relocates to, so that the people from downtown have a supermarket and the people from Southtown have a supermarket, and those people who get off the train, just like in so many other countries around the world, can do their shopping and take it home. Not have to go home and get in a car and go to the supermarket, and get their laundry at the supermarket, and get the other necessities that make life more enjoyable for them because of our modern train station.
Want to address that?
Yes. I'm proud of the work that the Stamford delegation has accomplished over the past 7 years to secure critical transportation funding for our city. Many of you probably know State Senator Carlo Leone, who was transportation chair. We worked closely with him and our delegation to secure over $200 million in bonding for transportation projects, including everything from the Atlantic Street underpass to the I-95 bridge construction project to things like the gate over Glenbrook train station to make it safer for pedestrians. I would like to ask my opponent, when was the last time he came to Hartford to testify in favor of a transportation project, or the last time he secured any bonding funding for transportation in Stamford? If he's ever met with our DOT commissioner, I'm proud of the record, and I will not apologize to the people of Stamford for the work that we have put in Hartford to fight for more funding for our city.
Valentine, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, I'm sure the delegation has done a great job. I was just wondering, because I haven't followed that closely, if, Caroline, were you the lead? Were you the leader in that delegation, bringing those funds to our city?
Candidates that will
Well, I can't ask that question. I'm sorry. Like I said, I didn't read up on that and follow it directly, so I'm not sure if she was. And I have no further questions or answers.
Wanted to address that, or if we should move on to the next question, I'll give you the choice.
I'm just happy to say that I think it's really important that we work together as a team. And I'm proud of our Stamford delegation. We've always had a strong delegation that works closely together. We all submit bonding requests together. We meet with our DOT commissioner together. And I'm not afraid to give credit where credit is due. I don't need credit for everything, but I'm proud of the team that we've worked on and what we've collectively fought for successfully for our city.
Okay. Mr. Valentine, our next question is to you. One of the things that has been plaguing our city is traffic congestion. This has been an issue over the course of many administrations. What will your administration do to address this that previous administrations have not already tried? And why should voters believe that you can solve this problem when others could not?
Well, regretfully, the person who knew most about traffic isn't me. And he happened to leave our city, Jim Travers, and went over to Norwalk. And with him, he took a wealth of knowledge along with his right-hand man or person. I think it's definitely a problem we have to address. I think we should start thinking about having high-speed bus lanes that can maneuver around the city, but not only maneuver in the routes that they have now, but maneuver through all of our communities in a lane that is for them so that the bus can get to where it needs to go and get there on time. It would probably increase ridership and cause a lot of people to leave their cars at home. But other than that, the only solution I see would take a lot of money, and that was take some of the major crosswalks that we have and have them go over our streets as they do in many other very successful and modern cities, so that there's not that 90-second pause every time someone hits the button to cross the street. It will allow traffic to move more freely and more efficiently, and I'd like to see that thought about.
Simmons.
Traffic's a really important issue that I hear so many complaints from my constituents on. And it's not just a nuisance, it's a quality of life issue. When you're stuck in traffic, that's missing time with your kids. It's getting to work late. It's missing out on time with loved ones. And so we have to work to reduce our traffic, to improve quality of life for residents and make our city more connected. First, one way to reduce traffic is to make our city less reliant on cars. In many ways, our city was built around cars, and you pretty much need to rely on a car oftentimes to get around the city. So I want to make our city more walkable, more bike-friendly, to build more sidewalks and make our city more connected so that you don't have to rely on a car to get around Stamford. Secondly, we need to invest in other modes of public transportation, invest in more frequent bus services and a rapid bus transit corridor between Stamford and Bridgeport, invest in better train service and high-speed rail, and even things like trolleys and other modes of transportation around Stamford. We live in such a wonderful city, and I think the traffic is unfortunately such a nuisance and such an impediment to our quality of life, but there's measures we can take that aren't that costly. Things like building more sidewalks, making our city more bike-friendly, and investing in other modes of transportation, and securing the funding we're going to be receiving from this federal infrastructure package to look at how we can reduce traffic and make our city more walkable and connected.
Our next panelist is Roy Balasaria.
Steve, thank you. The first question goes to you. Yeah. One of the expectations for the mayor, first one of the expectations for the mayor is to maintain and improve the economy of the city. As we are all here today, Stamford enjoys a AAA bond rating. Now, in the eyes of the financial community, that reflects a great economy. But some residents may disagree. And some may even go further as to say that a AAA credit rating does not matter. My question to you is, both of you actually, is does the city have a great economy?
No question. We have a great economy in Stamford. We're the economic engine of the state. We're now the second largest city in Connecticut. But economic development is critical, and too many people are still struggling. Our economy is working for some, but not for everyone. And especially amidst this pandemic, we've seen so many people lose their job. We have a 6% unemployment rate right now. Many of our small businesses and our restaurants are struggling. They had to take on enormous debt amidst this pandemic to stay alive at no fault of their own to protect the public safety. And so we need to do everything we can to help improve our economy and help those who were hit hardest by this pandemic get through this period. As co-chair of the Commerce Committee, I've been proud to help oversee economic development efforts in the state and to help big companies in Stamford like Indeed, Henkel, Charter, and Synchrony Financial create thousands of jobs in our city. But also, I've been a champion for small businesses. We've championed the Small Business Express program in the Commerce Committee, which has helped 72 businesses in Stamford get access to credit and capital. I've also helped make it easier to start a business in Connecticut by creating the one-stop shop portal to streamline the permitting process and launched the Made in Connecticut initiative to celebrate local businesses and local jobs. These are the kinds of initiatives I want to bring to the city as mayor. I'll be a champion for our small businesses, launching a COVID recovery fund to help small businesses get access to capital, and especially supporting women and minority-owned businesses. I also want to make Stamford one of the best cities in the state to start a business by creating a Small Business Express fast track program at the local level. And then finally, I want to launch a proactive marketing campaign to recruit businesses to Stamford. We have a 30% commercial vacancy rate, an enormous opportunity right now to attract businesses to our city and focus on industries of the future like
Simmons, your
bioscience.
time is-
And
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
sorry, thank you.
Mr. Valentine, over to you, the same question.
Those last 30 seconds weren't part of my time, were they? Oh, okay. Well, you know, one of us is a small business owner in town. One of us actually has done that for over 40 years. And I've seen this economy grow immensely in the last 40 years. It's grown because companies have come. It stopped growing because companies have gone. A valuable asset at 888 Washington Boulevard is a mayor who can not only bring businesses here, but retain them by making them, from the first day that they get here, part of our community, part of our giving community. The greatest thing that Stamford has, the greatest resource we have is not our businesses, it's our people who have given of their wherewithal, their money, their time for every year that I've been in this town. And I want those new businesses to take on that same responsibility of giving. And understand, hospital, the government, the third largest business in our city is our restaurant business. And we must do everything we can to get their workforce back up and running and give them the availability to access the government center when they need help to stay in business, not only start their business.
You just got a few seconds more.
Thank you.
Ms. Simmons, do you want a rebut?
Sure. I'll just add that economic development is vital. It's about helping people get a job with dignity and a living wage. It's about helping an immigrant who comes to our city with a dream be able to start a business. It's about ensuring families can provide for their kids. So economic development is critical. And as mayor, I want to build a more inclusive, equitable, and thriving city where everyone can pursue their dreams. One additional area that I wanted to mention is job training and workforce development. This is essential. And I want to launch programs for our students across all of our high schools to get work-based learning and internship opportunities. And I also want to launch a program to help connect unemployed individuals with jobs training and skills training so that they can secure 21st century jobs and get back into the workforce. I'll do everything I can to help reduce our unemployment rate in my first term in office and to help the people of Stamford thrive.
Thank you. Mr. Valentine, you want to use your 45 seconds?
Yeah, I'll just mention that in the businesses I've owned over the years and the thousands of jobs that I've created, at least half of them were first jobs that people had in our community and others. And probably, and I'm just guessing, 35 to 50% of them were the first job that they had in this country. And to see them develop over time, like the first guy I ever hired in my restaurant at Main Street, Max, who came from Haiti. And when he left to go back 33 years later, my dad gave him his car because Max was such a spectacular employee to take back to Haiti with him.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, it's back to you, Mr. Valentine. One of you will be entering the mayor's office with the usual fanfare, but also accompanied by some of the most challenging economic conditions. Inflation has hit 5.4% in September. It's the highest seen for the last 13 years, and it is expected to rise further. Gas prices are going up as we speak. Oil prices are climbing up. Interest rates are expected to rise. And the global supply chain, as you are probably well aware, is in absolute and utter disarray. CEOs around the world are preparing for the possibility of this storm. My question is to you first, are you ready? Are you prepared to deal with it?
Roy, I'm not sure anybody's totally prepared to deal with the unknown of the future, especially when you're dealing in an economic situation like you just described. But once again, experience is a great teacher. When I opened my first restaurant in downtown Stamford, interest rates were 17.5%, okay? We had to figure out how to borrow money at 17.5% to put in a stove because we didn't have funds in the bank. It's very hard to do. You must be creative. You must be nimble. You must be ready to adjust. And what I want to do, and I've already started and I've had wonderful interviews with people like yourself who know much more about economics than I do, who are willing and ready to join my team to make sure that the problem that we need to solve doesn't become a bigger problem after we get there, realizing that it's a problem when we get there. But remember again, my label on my sleeve is I'm a problem solver. I've done it all my life, complex problems in complex situations, and there's no one better to lead us than me in that type of situation.
Thank you on behalf of all the people like me. And Ms. Simmons, your turn on the same question.
All of those issues you mentioned are going to be critical for the future of Stamford, and it's a very difficult time for so many in our city. As you said, rising inflation is a challenge for our residents who are going to see an increase in the cost of goods, whether it's buying eggs or milk at the store or gas prices. Inflation is also a challenge for our city budget. Inflation rose approximately 1.05% this year and pretty much offset the gains that we made in the growth of our grand list. And so inflation is unfortunately increasing our city budget costs. And so we need to be conscious of that and do everything we can to continue to grow our grand list on the commercial side while also seeking more state funding for education and facilities so that we can reduce that burden and not shift it to local property taxpayers. With respect to the global supply chain, this is going to be a challenge for Stamford. We are an international trading hub. We have many companies across this city that rely on our international supply chain. As state representative and co-chair of the Commerce Committee, we've worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce and DECD on this issue to do everything we can, but this is going to be a challenge for Stamford and cities across the country that we have to be ready for. As mayor, I want to do everything I can to help our economy recover, to help ensure residents that are unemployed get access to high-paying jobs so that they can overcome these effects of rising inflation and be able to afford to live here, to afford basic goods to provide for their families and thrive here.
And just lastly, do I have 45 seconds? I forgot the rules.
I was just going to tell you that.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. In a crisis situation, you must act from your backpack. You can't be guessing at what to do. And the most important thing we have moving forward in a economy that seems like it's running away is to have someone who's managing the dollars that we have, who takes these funds that are coming from the feds and take these funds that are coming from Hartford and spend them prudently, manage the projects so the money's not wasted, because we're not going to have the supply of money that we once had that just will keep on coming. So a manager like me can do that.
Ms. Simmons, you want to use your 45 seconds?
Sure. So I am proud to be the only candidate in this race that has 12 years of federal and state government experience working with budgets at the federal level. Our budget of Homeland Security was over $45 billion. Similarly, in Connecticut, our 2-year biennial budget is around $40 billion. And we need someone who has the experience working at the federal and state level, navigating complex budgets, but also someone who is going to be focused on delivering a budget that represents our values and that focuses on helping people who are most vulnerable. As mayor, I want to make sure I'm working with our Board of Finance and all of our boards to assess our budget and where we could find cost savings and better deliver services for our residents. Right now, we spend more on legal services than we do on constituent services. These are the types of things that I want to remedy so that we can deliver a government that works better for the people of Stamford.
Thank you. The next question is about infrastructure, and you'll go first on it. However, I know both of you have touched upon certain aspects of infrastructure and how it is a priority for you. But in this case, both of you have proposed wide-ranging infrastructure development. Whether that means fixing our school buildings, paving the road, or fixing sidewalks. Can all these needs be addressed without, and I repeat, without, raising taxes and fees? And if so, how will you pay for them?
Yes. So all of the infrastructure projects you mentioned are vital for the future of Stamford, and I am confident that we can achieve them without raising taxes. We're at an opportune, historic moment with the federal infrastructure package that will hopefully be passing Congress any day now. Connecticut can expect to receive between $5 to $7 billion in funding, and that's funding that is going to directly go to our cities and towns across the state for things like adding electric school buses or modernizing our train station or fixing structurally deficient bridges. So that is money that's going to be coming down, that's not going to be burdening local taxpayers, that we can secure with a plan on day one. I plan to be meeting with our transportation and engineering departments to get a list of shovel-ready projects and to prioritize which ones we can use that federal funding for, and to work with our state delegation and the governor's office and DOT to make them happen. With respect to our school infrastructure, this is an area where we have to do better. We have to bring a sense of urgency to getting rid of hazardous mold in our school facilities, improving our air quality at our schools. phasing out portable buildings. I can remember visiting the portables at Newfield when I was pregnant with my first and touring the portables, and I was advised not to enter the portables because the mold was too dangerous for me. That is unacceptable. If it was too dangerous for me, why are our teachers and students expected to be able to learn in those conditions? Imagine if you're a child in school trying to learn, we're trying to instill a love of learning. Our children deserve better facilities that are worthy of the amazing teachers and students that fill these buildings. So as mayor, I'm confident we can secure the state and federal funding necessary to fix these projects.
Thank you. Mr. Valentine, same question to
Yes.
you.
As I said, I'm new at this. I get really confused, and I don't understand why I keep hearing my opponent say that when she gets into office, that the needs of our schools are then going to be an urgent concern of hers. It seems like the day of urgency has come and gone, and it's another word that's probably not in my vocabulary. But one of the things we have to understand is that our partners, when dealing with infrastructure, are vitally important. Eversource, Aquarium, and our WPCA are our partners. We must work together with them. We can't have Eversource coming in and digging up the road that we just paved so they put in their line. We can't have a situation where we're waiting for the drought to leave and Aquarium not addressing our needs if in fact that happens. I've met with all three of these companies, and I can tell you it's a great working relationship with the WPCA. And Aquarium feels like they're doing their job right now and doing what they have to do. But I was amazed to find out that we're $8 million in the rears to Eversource. No wonder they don't come in and fix our lines when they go down. We owe them money. We need to have partnerships with the people who we are partners with to get the infrastructure done properly.
Ms. Simmons, you want your 45 seconds?
Sure. I'll just say I want to give credit to the Stamford delegation, and I'm proud of the work that we've put in, the long hours we've been fighting up in Hartford for the past 7 years on education. We secured $65 million for the new Strawberry Hill School that has helped alleviate overcrowding in our schools. I'll never forget the look on the kids' faces when they first walked into that school and the joy we hear from parents. I want to make sure we're securing more funding like that to fix our school facilities and build new schools. Our population is growing so rapidly, we need new facilities. I've also secured consistent increases in ECS funding, early childhood funding, as well as funding for Wright Tech High School. And I'd like to ask my opponent how many times he ever came to testify before education, how many bonding dollars he secured for our schools, any schools that he rebuilt. So I'm proud of the work that we did as a Stamford delegation, and we'll continue to be a leader on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've given a lot of money to all of our schools, all our philanthropics, all of our charities over the years, and I've given my wherewithal also. But, you know, this idea of getting the money, the Strawberry Hill project is a regional school. Okay, that's not money that came to Stamford. That came to Stamford because we were going to share the classroom space with the region. We must understand that. We also must understand that was in 2013, and that project still isn't complete. That's why you need proper management. That's why you need people who inspect what they expect and demand no less than excellence. We can't do these new school projects the way we've done our old school projects. New leadership is needed.
Thank you. My time is up. Ms. Simmons, Mr. Valentine, thank you. Steve?
Our next panelist is Alice Knapp.
Well, we've just spent some time talking about infrastructure and the economy, and they're both important to the city. But another key aspect of vitality is the arts and culture, such as the theater, the symphony, the arts, the library. Do you have any plans to support arts and cultures in Stamford? And this first question goes to Ms. Simmons.
Yes, arts and culture is essential to the vibrancy of our community. Arts brings us together, and culture celebrates our rich cultural heritage. And as mayor, I will prioritize enhancing arts and culture in Stamford. We have wonderful nonprofits like the ones you mentioned, like our library, like the Stamford Palace, like all of the other nonprofits we have. And as state representative, part of my job as co-chair of the Commerce Committee was to oversee the Office of the Arts for Connecticut, where we gave out grants to municipalities for art projects. As mayor, we have an Arts and Culture Commission that I want to enhance. It distributes grants to local nonprofits to enhance arts and culture. I think there's much more we could do there. I think there's also ways we can better enhance opportunities for public art, like murals and arts and crafts across our city. I also want to make sure that every student in our city at school has access to quality art. I remember visiting schools and some students are getting art on a cart. Some had full art classrooms. So we need to make sure that all of our students have access to art. We know that art is essential for academic achievement and cultivating curiosity and creativity, and it's a wonderful outlet for students who have mental health issues. So I want to make sure that there's equitable access to arts at all of our schools as well.
Yes, I'd be very remiss if I didn't, in conjunction with the endorsement I got today from the Stamford Education Association, to recognize Sandra Melzer, who is here, who is my drama teacher in high school, who first let me know, the second generation Italian guy, that culture, the arts, the stage, music, dance were just as important as those things that you learn and participate out on the sports field. And I think this presents a great opportunity for us to take that old town hall building and turn that into a multicultural center, have it be a museum for different ethnics, sports museums and fame museums, and have it celebrate Stamford, Connecticut, and all of the wonderful people who have come through our community, who have made a difference in the world. That place, as well as others, need to be not only championed by the mayor, but need to be designated by the mayor as one of the first projects that one of these new companies, like Grayscale, billion-dollar company who wants to be part of the community, let's let them be part of developing our arts and culture. It can't come from the taxpayer only. It must come from those outside sources, and I'm the guy to convince them to stay and give.
I just wanted to add, I was thinking about last week when we had, or 2 weeks ago, the Stamford Arts and Crafts Festival on Bedford Street. And I just want to credit the Stamford Downtown Special Services for the work that they do to promote our arts and culture. And I think we could expand opportunities like that across our city so that it's not just downtown, but there's access to the arts in all different neighborhoods. So that's something I want to champion as mayor. And then another thing that I think we should enhance is live music opportunities and pop-up opportunities for arts and music at our parks and recreational spaces across Stamford.
And at last, just the last little recognition, because a letter went out from Lori Guzda, who reminded me that I helped start Curtain Call in our town, a wonderful nonprofit organization that does wonderful things in presenting shows in our community.
Thank you. The next question will be for you, Mr. Valentine. The mall, with its increasing number of vacancies, is a significant part of Stamford's downtown. Although it is privately owned, as mayor, you will have some level of influence on the future of the property. Do you have a vision for that space, and what would you do to bring that vision to life?
Well, that has a chance of being a real dinosaur and a problem in our town. And just across the street from it, there once was a big hole for 33 years in our town. And that seemed to be unsolvable until I used my human resources to meet with people, including a guy that I was sitting on a board with for Steel Partners. He happened to be named Tony Bergamo. After I talked to him about all of his skill set, he finally told me at dinner one night that he also managed the hole in my hometown and that he was Howard Milstein's right-hand man. And along with one of Caroline's paid politicals there, Tommy Jackson, and many other delegates from Stamford, I arranged a face-to-face meeting with Howard Milstein in downtown New York, Manhattan, in his office building. And the deal was already done by Tony Bergamo, who befriended me and felt that it was time to let go of that hole. And the deal for that hole was made. And this mall situation might present as big a challenge. And I'm confident that I'll be able to help solve that problem.
Sure. I'll start by saying it's bittersweet thinking about that mall because it used to be such an attraction for our city. I remember growing up, my siblings and I used to go there, and it was one of the best malls in the area. But as we've seen with malls across this country, they are dying. Unfortunately, retail and brick and mortar have gotten hurt by Amazon and the pandemic and the trends that we're seeing, and also the competition with the new Sono Mall. So unfortunately, we are facing a number of vacancies at the Stamford Mall, but I think this presents a unique opportunity to repurpose and reimagine what that space could be. It's right in the heart of our downtown, and there's so many different things we could do with it. I had a great conversation with the new owners of the mall, Safavia, a couple of weeks ago, and I know they've got some really creative ideas. A couple ideas I have are potentially making it mixed use for housing, retail, education and learning opportunities for students, knocking down those ramps that make it so inaccessible, making it more pedestrian friendly and walkable and open with green spaces. I also think it could be neat to explore potentially creating a sports arena or live music venue out of that space. But what's really important is I want to hear public input on this. This is really the center of our downtown, and I want to hear what the public thinks about this. So I'm looking forward to holding public hearings on this, to working with our boards and working with the owners of the mall to envision a new space that all of us can enjoy.
Thank you. The next one is for Ms. Simmons. With the increased severity in storms impacting Stamford, there appears to be more significant flooding in the city. Is the infrastructure in place to address flooding sufficient to protect the homes and businesses in Stamford? And if not, how do you specifically plan to improve it?
Our infrastructure is vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change with storms and flooding and other severe weather. As a coastal city with rising sea levels, we need to be better prepared to create a more resilient infrastructure that can withstand these severe weather effects. As mayor, I want to launch a Stamford plan to combat climate change that would start with conducting a vulnerability assessment of all of our critical infrastructure, looking at where we are vulnerable. With respect to flooding, many of our storm drains haven't been updated in decades, so we need to start by doing an assessment of which ones need to be upgraded and how we can better divert the flow of water. We can also better utilize technology. If you look at what the smart city approach, we can add sensors to our storm drains to increase technology. But overall, launching a Stamford plan to combat climate change and also making our infrastructure more resilient to the effects of climate change is vital for the future of Stamford. As a coastal city, as the second largest city in Connecticut, we are not immune to the effects of climate change. And not only do we have an obligation to make our infrastructure more resilient for our kids and future generations, we also have an obligation to reduce our carbon footprint and protect our environment. Globally, cities are responsible for 85% of carbon emissions. And as a city, we need to do our part to reduce our carbon footprint. So I want to make sure that we're adding more renewable energy, adding solar to our rooftops, electrifying our fleets, and reducing our carbon footprint to make our city more resilient and sustainable.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, with the increased severity in storms impacting Stamford, there appears to be more significant flooding in the city. Is the infrastructure in place to address flooding sufficient to protect the homes and businesses of Stamford? And if not, how do you specifically plan to improve it?
I thought that's what the question was. Our neighboring city of Greenwich did a resiliency study, something that they got most of the funding from FEMA. And that study shows what effect global climate change is actually going to have on our coastline and the rising tides of the Sound. And we need to do that too. Because along with that study, it not only shows you how the water rises, it shows you how the shoreline communities will be able to adapt if in fact there's infiltration from the Sound into our neighborhoods. We need to understand that situation before we waste time and money in fixing an infrastructure that might not be fixing the real problem as it occurs in the future. So I'd like to see that study done. It's not that expensive. I'd like to get real engineers who understand our underground infrastructure of water flow and understand how much water our land can actually absorb as this continual battering of water occurs, and then make a very smart decision on how to fix it. It's not adequate now, and we need to fix it properly.
Our last panelist is Claude Morest.
Good evening, candidates. I want to thank you on behalf of my students and the Stamford Public Schools for your civil debate and for the passion you've exhibited for our city. I think you're setting a great example for your students, so thank you very much. My first question is for candidate Valentine, and it is, one significant challenge you will face as mayor, potentially, is to improve the city's schools. This will be further complicated because you will have limited control over the school budgets. Are there any non-traditional or out-of-the-box steps you will take to accomplish your educational initiatives?
It's a big problem, and it's been here a long time, and I'm going to try to solve that problem the best I can. But first, we need more funding. Okay, we cannot get less money than all the other cities in this state our size and expect to fix the problems in our school system. There's a town of Killingly, Connecticut. I never heard of it before. They have 17,000 people. We have 17,000 students. They get the same funding for their schools as Stamford, Connecticut does. Are we missing something here? So we must make sure that as we're banging on those doors of Hartford, our knocks are being heard, that this crazy 18-step formula that shuts us out of all funding needs to be reconsidered because we have major problems that need to be addressed. I did major renovations in buildings at Sacred Heart University, spent over $35 million in projects that all came in on time, on budget, and looked spectacular, and worked with SLAM, the same group that is doing the design plan for our master plan. I talked to him. It's not an easy fix, but people who know how to manage, know how to solve problems need to be there. That's what I do.
It's Simmons.
Thank you for the question and for all that you do for schools and students. And investing in education is vital for our community. And I want to say that we have such a wonderful school system in Stamford. We have devoted teachers, incredibly talented students. And I think, unfortunately, Stamford always gets slammed in the news and doesn't get the proper credit that it deserves. So I want to just give credit to the incredible school system that we have. No question we have challenges and we need to improve, but we have an amazing school system that we should be proud of. As mayor, I plan to be a champion for our schools, and I will, as a non-voting member of the Board of Education, I will be an active member using that seat to use my voice to work with our Board of Ed and our superintendent to get more resources and funding for our schools. My top 3 priorities will be, first, getting more funding to fix our school facilities. We are working right now with the long-term school facilities plan to get reimbursement to renovate or rebuild West Hill High School, and we're going to be getting an answer on that by December. I want to make sure we have a plan in place for our other schools that are in need of repair, and that we work with the delegation and the governor to get that funding, just as we have the past 7 years successfully. Secondly, we need to help our students who are struggling right now make up for lost time in the classroom. 43% of our kindergartners are below the benchmark for literacy, and a quarter of our freshmen are not on track to graduate. We need to launch robust after-school programs, tutoring programs, and another robust summer school program next summer to help our students catch up. And finally, I want to be a champion for mental health and getting better mental health resources for our students, enhancing social workers and social emotional curriculum and learning, and having a better dialogue with students, teachers, parents, and principals so that we can do everything we can to set them up for success.
Like to follow up on that?
No, the last thing I would say is that I've also built buildings and projects with my own money, where my dollar counted, where I was signing the front of the checks to the contractors who were doing the buildings. And I understand how important it is for proper management of those funds. And I'll treat the city funds just like they're mine. The money that I got at Sacred Heart wasn't my money, it was my friend's money who donated to the university that I was at. And any dollar that is spent to build and rebuild our schools, I'll have a personal attachment to that to make sure that we're on time and on budget.
Candidate Simmons, would you like a 45-second rebuttal?
Sure, I'll just add 2 more important priorities with respect to education. I want to make sure that we're celebrating our successes, that we're championing our teachers and students and giving them the recognition that they deserve. So I want to celebrate the Teacher of the Month or celebrate student achievements and do a better job of promoting all the great things happening in our schools. Secondly, I also want to make sure that our schools are as welcoming as possible to people from all different backgrounds. We have communities that speak over 65 different languages in our city, which is incredible, and it makes up for the rich cultural heritage and vibrancy of our city. But I want to make sure that we're properly communicating with all of our communities so that they are involved and that their voices are heard. And then finally, on the mental health side, this is the top issue I hear from students. I was at West Hill High School earlier this week, and this was the top question and concern they have. Many of them have just experienced trauma and are facing anxiety from social isolation, so we need to do everything we can to support our students get through this difficult time.
Okay, next question, and that goes to candidate Simmons. There was a very extensive discussion during the debate among candidates for the Stamford Board of Education on the subject of systemic racism. Do you believe that there is systemic racism within Stamford Public Schools? If so, what steps should be taken to address it?
Systemic racism is a critical issue that we need to address and tackle as a city. And no question, there is racism, there is inequality, there's racial injustice happening in our schools and across our city. If you look at this past year amidst the pandemic, when Black people were dying at twice the rate of white people and had double the rate of unemployment, that is unacceptable and an injustice that we have to rectify. With respect to our schools, we're still seeing inequities. We see that Black students are suspended at 3 times the rate of white students, and that achievement levels are lower for our African American students. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to get rid of racism, to make sure we're providing a more equitable system, to provide more support for all of our students, and that we're lifting up students and getting them the resources and tools needed to succeed. One of the best ways we can reduce racial injustice is to ensure that every child who's starting out kindergarten is starting out on the right track with preschool experience, and hundreds of students in our city still don't have access to pre-K. So I want to advance universal pre-K so we can ensure that our students are starting off kindergarten on the right track and not falling behind. I also want to make sure that we're recruiting a more diverse workforce in our schools. We know that students do better when they're taught by a teacher that looks like them, who can relate to them. And almost 90% of our teachers are white, despite the fact that we have a wonderfully diverse population. So I want to make sure we're recruiting more diverse teachers and investing in workforce development and training for our teachers to make sure that we're raising the bar and helping all of our students succeed and reducing the racial injustices that we see.
Candidate Valentine.
Well, I'm going to have to do some more research and talking to teachers and students to find out an answer to that very difficult question. If there is, there's no place for it in Stamford or any other school around the country, or for that matter, around the world. That our students need to be treated equitably and treated fairly when they get there until the time they leave there. And one of those things that Rodney Bass and Tony Pavia and other great administrators, as well as many of the teachers that I've talked with, stressed, which was an old idea, but that is that the third grade reading level of every student must be third grade before we put them into fourth grade. And we haven't done a good job at that. And that is one of the main reasons that so many of our students are left behind, that their reading level isn't where it needs to be. So that pre-K learning, our kindergarten learning, first and second and third grade learning, we need to be laser focused into that part of our school system to give every student who goes to the Stamford school system the fair chance of progressing and getting the degree and education that they deserve.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question. This is a 90-second response, like other questions. Candidate Valentine, it's going to go to you. And then I'm going to ask Candidate Simmons a follow-up question that's roughly equivalent, but not the same question. Candidate Valentine, Candidate Simmons said there is systemic racism in Stamford Public Schools, and she cited a variety of examples of that. I'm just curious, do you agree with what she said, that those are problems, and how could are those a reflection of systemic racism, or is there something else at work here?
Again, I don't think I'm educated in the matter enough to say that. I've been in the schools, I've talked to the teachers, I've talked to many parents, I've talked to many students. I'm not sure that's there, and as I say, if it is, there's no place for it in our school or any other school. And how would you address it? You have to address it with knowledge. All problems need to be addressed with communication and knowledge of the situation, not with handcuffs and taking students or teachers out of the school, but with communication of what things need to be different if in fact they need to change. And that's all part of the educational system in schools. It's also part of the educational system of life, that you need to know the right thing to do with your fellow man and woman and at all corners of your experience.
Okay. Candidate Simmons, so you said there is systemic racism in Stamford Public Schools. But it sounded to me like what you were describing is simply a reflection of the systemic racism that characterizes our society as a whole. What I was wondering is if you can identify something particular in Stamford Public Schools themselves that is an example of systemic racism within Stamford Public Schools that could be fixed or addressed.
Sure. So I think if you look at the policies that our society has promoted for decades have led to unjust outcomes for communities of color And the fact that my opponent is not knowledgeable of that is troubling, given what we just saw this past year amidst this pandemic. The fact that communities of color have experienced discrimination when it comes to housing and employment and in our criminal justice system and in our school system. If you look at suspension rates or resource allocation, your zip code shouldn't determine the quality of your education, the quality of your housing, the quality of the environment that you're living in, whether you're able to access capital or access a mortgage. We've made progress as a society, but we still have so much work to do. And we can't say that we're a fully equal and just society unless we call out these injustices that are still happening and we tackle the social determinants of health that led to the adverse outcomes in this pandemic. It's not surprising that my opponent doesn't understand this because he continuously tries to divide us by saying that if you don't own in Stamford, you don't care. That if you're renting in this city, you don't care. That if you weren't born in this city, that you're not worthy. I think this type of mindset reflects the values that he would bring as mayor, and it's offensive. As mayor, I want to be a unifying mayor that lifts up our community, that calls out injustice, and seeks to do everything we can to build a more equitable, inclusive, and just society.
Candidate Valentine, would you like a rebuttal, or should we move on to the next question?
No, I just get confused how someone who represents one party and then says that they actually represent another party, and that party, the independent party, actually supported Donald Trump in the last election, but she's the mayoral candidate, and she's the Democratic candidate, and that she is unifying. I think she's dividing, because that's what this political system of ours has been designed to do. And the reason that I'm running unaffiliated from all parties, without any favors, without any money, without any hackers that come from their political party, they're not with me. And I want to set the right example, not the wrong one.
And Candidate Simmons, did you want a final rebuttal, or should we move on? Okay. There's a lot of pressure on me to move on, but I do want to ask this last question. So you have to promise to be quick, because as you know, I'm a history teacher, and I have to ask you, who is the historical figure that will serve as an inspiration to your leadership if you are elected mayor? And this question goes to Candidate Simmons first.
I would say John F. Kennedy is an inspiration to me. I grew up, my parents have been an inspiration for me and my siblings to get involved in public service, and I grew up hearing stories from them about the 1960s and President John F. Kennedy's famous inaugural address saying, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And his words led to a generation of Americans joining the Peace Corps and the Foreign Service and joining the space race. And it was such a time of hope for our country and social justice movements. And similarly, I felt that call to action when 9/11 happened in high school. I was devastated, like all of us were, and I felt that sense of patriotism and desire to serve that led me to want to work at Homeland Security. And I think his words still ring true today when we think about what makes Stamford such a wonderful city. It's the devoted, talented people that give back to our city every day. And that's what makes me so proud to have been a state representative here and to be running for mayor, because of our people, because of how we wake up in the morning and say, what can we do for our community? What can we do for our city? People have been on the front lines this past year amidst this pandemic, giving back, volunteering, risking their lives for the betterment of our community. And that's what's so inspiring to me and gives me the resolve and drive to want to be mayor, and to really listen to those words from JFK and what can we do for our city together to make it a better place for the future.
Candidate Valentine.
I have to dig into the sports history book, if you don't mind. And I'll tell you, there was a person I became friends with who I was on a game show with back in 1973, who was one of the most amazing orators, one of the most amazing figure, someone who had courage to stand up for his conviction, someone who tried to unite every step of the way. The guy's name was Cassius Clay early, and it later became Muhammad Ali for some who are younger and might not know who that is. And he, for me, had that courage in a very difficult time for me to look up to. As a guy, I met him, I befriended him, he befriended me. He was against the war, I was against the war. He had a bigger soapbox, and I loved hearing him when he was on the soapbox, and I really loved him in the ring.
Thank you, Claude. We're running a little late, but I do have one last question, and maybe perhaps we can do it quickly. Mr. Valentine, goes to you first. What is the biggest misconception voters have about you?
Probably anything they've heard in the propaganda sent out by the Democrats, which are mostly not misconceptions, they're lies. You know, for people not to understand who I am and keep trying to define what I am doesn't give credit to the intelligence of the community that I've lived in, was born in, and raised in, and have friends in. They know who I am, and the misconceptions that are out there, that some of them were mentioned today on stage in an embarrassing way, and I hope that I don't ever have to hear them again, are not only misconceptions, but they also tuck away at the fabric of our society, of Stamford, Connecticut, the place that I was taught to be fair, to be proper, to respect your opponent as well as yourself. When you look in the mirror, respect yourself, but make sure if there's someone across the field that you shake their hand after the game and tell them they did a good job too. And to see that void of this 5 months, it's a misconception. It's also a crying shame.
Ms. Simmons, what's the biggest misconception voters have about you?
I think the biggest misconception is that because I wasn't born in Stamford, that I don't have enough invested in this city, that I don't care about the city, or that I'm not worthy to try to lead this city. And my opponent has said that consistently on his mail pieces, in his advertisements, and in his rhetoric. And I think it's offensive not only to me, the fact that I wasn't born here does not mean that I don't care about the city, that I don't love this city. I've devoted most of my adult life to serving our country and serving this city as state representative. I love this city. I'm proud to be raising my 2 boys in this city. But that rhetoric is not just offensive to me, it's offensive to the 35% of our population that is foreign born, to hundreds of immigrant families that come to our city with a dream to build a life here, to new families that are moving into our city and that want to plant roots here and start a business here, raise a family here. That messaging is divisive, it's unwelcoming, and it sends a signal to people that you're not worthy if you weren't born here. And I think it's a really outdated notion that is not welcoming, not inclusive, and not the values that we need in our future mayor. So as mayor, I'm going to build a more inclusive and welcoming city. And I want to tell our immigrant community and anyone that has moved here recently, you are welcome here. We want to build a more inclusive city, and anyone can pursue their dreams here, no matter where you were born.
Okay, it's time for your closing statements. And as agreed, Ms. Simmons, you go first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you again to the Prometheum for hosting us tonight. Thank you to my opponent for the spirited debate tonight. And thank you all for listening. I am so honored to be running for mayor of Stamford, and I see so much possibility and potential that lies ahead for our city. My goal is to build a flourishing city that is bursting with opportunity for all of our residents, and to build a more inclusive and equitable and affordable city where everyone can thrive. My goal is to fix our infrastructure, to invest in our schools, to champion business and job growth, to make our city more affordable, and to make our government more responsive so that you get responses in a timely manner and that your problems get fixed and addressed with a sense of urgency. We live in such a wonderful city with so many talented, diverse people and so many assets that we should be proud of. And our job in government is to make our system work better for you, to deliver a city government that can help you pursue your dreams and raise your families and enjoy your life here. As a former Homeland Security official, as a state representative, as a local nonprofit leader, and as a mom who loves this city and who loves watching my 2 boys, and soon to be 3rd boy, growing up here, I couldn't be more excited about all the potential that lies ahead. And I know that together we can achieve all of this. We can build a more vibrant, inclusive, and equitable city that works for everyone. And I hope I can earn your vote on November 2nd and that we can move our city forward together.
Thank you. Mr. Valentine?
Yes, I see a good friend of mine, Andy McAleer, in the audience, and I just want to make it clear, Andy, when I tell people you're from Greenwich, I'm not insulting you. And what I'd also like to do is say that I think that I have a major responsibility to this city. In the job that I'm trying to get, there will be great expectations for the city. But I think there'll even be greater expectations for me. Because the only thing I ever did in my life, whether I was the lead in the tea house of the August Moon, or I was the starting shortstop for the Dodgers, or if I was the New York Met manager, or the first American to ever manage in Japan, or if I was the athletic director at Sacred Heart University, I always felt I had a responsibility to make the people of Stamford proud, to make my mom and dad proud when they were here, to make my family proud, and to make all the people who have given so much to me in my life from this community, that it was my total obligation to make them proud every step of the way. And these next steps are going to be big steps. And I'm going to guarantee you that when I'm elected mayor, I'm going to make the people of this city proud, not only of me, but proud of Stamford, Connecticut, because I am not for a party. I am only for the people. Thank you for your time tonight. It's been a little hot in here. Sorry if I went over my time one time. Bless you all.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you, candidates. I know how hard it is to run for office, and we appreciate it. That concludes our debate, and thank you again.